welcome to the program. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Dean.
Appreciate it.
Good to be here.
So you, I just thought, most people in this room, I walked around tonight and asked them, you guys know what United Airlines is? Like one word that came out, it's like, you guys are huge.
Airline.
This is a massive company. They didn't say airline, they just said huge. But for those of you that haven't been over to their global headquarters in the Willis Tower, it is one of the eighth wonders of the world, I think. It is this amazing network operations center they have. This company is clearly a jewel for Chicago. So quick stats. It's a Fortune 100 company. Actually, it's a double-digit number. I think it's Fortune 78 right now. $39 billion in revenue, 86,000 employees, 5,000 flights to 353 airports in 58 countries a day. Oh, God. When I asked people, the other thing in the room today, I said, when you think of the biggest e-commerce sites in the world, what do you think of? So most of them said, you want to guess? Amazon,
Apple. Right.
And what I have found out in just hanging out with you is that most people don't know that United Airlines is one of the largest e-commerce websites in the world. Millions of users. I think your app alone, just your app, has 20 million active users. People like me want to get places. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if you took just United.com, it itself could be a Fortune company, right?
United.com, as a freestanding company, we don't break out the revenue independently, but I'll tell you this, United.com is double-digit billions in revenue. So
double-digit billions. Take that,
so
Zappos. That's what I say.
Yeah.
So how, and you're the guy, you're Chief Marketing Officer, Senior VP, all the digital stuff. Oh, by the way, President of MileagePlus. How do you manage all this mass scale?
Coffee.
Lots of coffee.
Yeah. No, I think what's interesting about it is a fascinating business. I mean, I think it's good for someone to know what they like doing, and what I like doing is things that are really big and really complicated. And if you like things that are really big and really complicated, then working in airlines is a great place to be. I think that in order to do what we do, one needs to be comfortable at scale in a highly visible circumstance, and yet not let that inhibit continuing to advance, particularly in the subject of this evening's conversation, particularly digital innovation, because it can be easy to get too careful. And I know when I was talking about coming to United, I was talking with a gentleman named Glenn Tilton, who at the time was the CEO of United, and said to Glenn, so, what do you think is going to be critical for success in this job? And Glenn said, you need to be comfortable making very bold decisions under extremely high visibility. And I think you could add to that in a digital environment, need to be comfortable advancing the digital forefront at scale under very, very high visibility.
Yeah, I mean, so you guys have probably seen some of the cool apps that have been built in the back room here. These guys have to tie into some of the oldest and largest legacy systems in the world, mass technology that doesn't always behave properly.
Yeah, if there's an obscure programming language no one uses, we probably have a critical system that runs on it.
You probably still have digital equipment. Yeah. Most people don't remember what DEC is, but it used to be in business. I mean, you've got equipment that's older than probably the founder of Zappos, I would think. I mean, this stuff is legacy to tie into. And that kind of commercial grade stuff.
You are older than the founder of Zappos.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So,
it's true. Don't know how to come back from that one. I just feel totally depressed. But but seriously, how do you walk into this new job and you're like, wow, I need a new digital team, but they also have to understand hardcore tech. So how did that go? You've built a pretty impressive team.
We're very fortunate. We do have a great team at United in e-commerce, digital more broadly, and maybe one of the things we'll talk about is I think e-commerce and digital would have been used largely interchangeably and synonymously, at least in our world up until recently, and I'll suggest that more and more the latter will be much, much broader than the former. But getting back to your question, we do have a great team, and I think that it's a matter of having certainly the right leadership, Scott Wilson and Mark Nasser, to call out some names, but I think beyond that, it's the right combination of people who are comfortable advancing the forefront, in our case of the app, it is a very popular app, while at the same time doing so in an environment where one needs to be very careful. If not to knock Zappos, I like buying stuff from Zappos, but if somebody gets something wrong on our app, it's not that your shoes don't show up, it's that you can't board your flight in Tokyo. I mean, it can go real bad real fast if we're not careful. And so having people who are comfortable acting at scale, while at the same time continuing to push the forefront of digital applications.
And what kind of stuff are they working on these days? Tell us something.
I think the next big threshold, and what what we're working on now, the title or one of the comments that we're going to talk about tonight was the future of travel. And so if you think, what are they working on related to the future of travel? I would say it is digitally enabled customer experience, I think is the next.
So does that mean I don't have to go to Orlando tonight? I just teleport there? Is that where we're going?
No, that would be non-existent customer experience. Yeah, no, I would say that here's what I mean. If you think, if someone were to say digital channels have transformed travel industry, that is both a true statement and an entirely conventional statement at this point. But if you think about the impact of digital channels on the industry, they have been to date largely, to put this as necessarily a little in travel industry parlance, largely about distribution, largely about booking flights, transactions, e-commerce. I think that what is being developed now in the next big threshold will be digitally enabled customer experience. Proactive, data-driven, mobile-centric, digitally enabled customer experience. What does that mean? We now have the building blocks in place. Take when a snowstorm hits O'Hare, and as much as we may optimize our business, the fact of the matter is snowstorms are going to hit O'Hare. It is unavoidably disruptive. To the extent that we can proactively advise our customers, enable them to modify their travel plans in advance through digital channels, even while, in some cases, they are in flight on the plane. We've now got the pieces in place to do this. Got Wi-Fi, you have the mobile device, mobile app is more and more capable, and we'll be introducing a new site here in middle of the year, brand new, total brand new, ground up, United.com. New mobile app, have a new release of that coming out here in a few weeks. Behind the scenes, in every one of these digital channels now, what we're building in, among other things, are more and more and more tools and functionality to digitally enable the travel experience before and during the day of travel. So somebody said, what's the future of travel? Digitally enabled customer experience.
And for those of you that have used the United app, it's actually not only impressive, it makes you rely on it for many other things. I noticed there's some buttons that aren't on here where I'll be able to watch my video and entertainment.
Yep.
And can you just real quick tell us about the user experience that you kind of said, hey, we need to go follow guys like Dean around in airports to figure out how to design this? That was kind of cutting edge back then. Most companies weren't doing it.
Sure. We'll talk about that. One interesting metric about the app that I can share with you. The app we have, as I think Dean mentioned, in excess of 20 million users of our app. We know that they tend to be engaged because when we issue an update or issue a release, virtually all tend to download it very quickly. But what I think is more interesting metric is that the sessions per user is growing faster than the number of users, and the number of users is growing rapidly. So what that means is more people are using the app more frequently per person. And that I think is a particularly revealing combination of statistics. To get to
most companies would love to say that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You put up the graph of how fast the app downloads, unique app downloads are growing. So that's a strongly growing statistic. The use per individual is growing faster. Getting back to your question about development of the app, it's been said a number of times in the press, but it is actually true that the app really was designed for day of travel use, or largely for day of travel use. That's shifting, but initially largely for day of travel use. And day of travel, meaning when you're at the airport, largely amounts to walking down the concourse holding it in one hand. And so it is true, it has been said, but it is absolutely true, that Scott Wilson and Mark Nasser's team developed the app to be easy to use with one hand when you're walking down the concourse, because they observed that's how people really use it. Now, interestingly enough, while the initial use of the app was largely day of travel, more and more it is becoming a booking channel in and unto itself. And an interesting threshold, for those of you who've been around the travel industry at all, or even if you haven't, you may appreciate, we're coming up on what I think is a really interesting milestone for United Airlines, but in the broader context of travel industry. We expect this year that bookings, revenue bookings, through the mobile app will exceed the combined total of the 17 contact centers United has around the world. If you think about that. That to me is a real milestone in the travel industry. Contact centers, since their inception, have been a mainstay, high volume booking channel we anticipate, we will book more business through the mobile app this year than through 17 contact centers around the world. I think that is a real milestone in the industry, and frankly also a test of the popularity of United's app.
That's amazing. Yeah, so a multi-billion-dollar company you happen to run. So I'm a beta tester for the new site. Huge stand-up effort going on, massive implications. And I see you're bringing over a lot of the cool stuff from the app, so I like it. I could probably book something faster on this with one thumb than most of my friends, which is dangerous. Just a quick question though, what have you learned in this process by people like us sending you feedback? What's going on?
What's interesting is we did, I think it is not hyperbole to say, an intense and exceptional amount of customer research before we launched the closed beta. For something that is, as we've said, double-digit billions of dollars, one is very, very careful about modifying it. So we did a lot of research. And what's interesting is that now that it's out there in a closed beta, we're in a closed beta of the new site right now. Now it's out in closed beta, what we thought people would like, in fact, is what they like. The site is faster. I'll tell you a statistic that we haven't said publicly before. We're observing in the beta 75% less user errors in use of the site. That's a meaningful metric. When you say, okay, people are making 75% less user mistakes so far in the beta site, and you know, I mean, the people who are here this evening, I mean, you know that user errors have a direct relationship to conversion rate and ultimately to booking. So 75% user errors is a very meaningful statistic. What we thought people were going to like about the site, they do. There are some cases, yes, what we've learned so far, there are some cases where we went a little too far in trying to simplify the site. You know, we took the approach of make it as stripped down and simple and uncluttered as possible. And part of what we're hearing, we launched the private beta on February 11th. So it's been out there now, what, a month and a half. And one of the things we're seeing is, hey, you know, you took out, I'll give you real information here. We took out in many of the flight displays what type of equipment it's on. Is it a 757, is it a 737, a 767, and so on. One of the things we heard back in the closed beta is, no, we want to know that up front. I'm interested. Is it an Airbus or is it a 737 or is it a 767? And so that's an example of something that we put back in. So those are real examples.
Yeah, guys like me, we want to know the nose cone number so we know what's coming in, all that stuff. Real quick answer on just, you guys put the big in big data. Most people don't like to talk about big data. Sonny does, but it tends to be boring. But you know more information about us as travelers than the government does and other people. You've got a lot of sensitive information. How are you using big data analytics, in a short answer, to actually improve customer experience, to improve the whole process actually from a consumer point of view? I know it's a long answer, but.
Yeah, I would say it in a few ways. We just very recently made a change actually to end the siloization, so to speak, of customer data analytics from operational data analytics. Really right now, our enterprise data analytics group spans operational, customer data, and all of the other facets of data analytics. So the first thing is to eliminate the siloization. So there may very well be meaningful, and in reference to your question, customer experience enhancing analytics that span operational data and customer data. What would an example of that be? What is the profile, I'll make it a real simple question, what is the profile of a traveler who is most likely to misconnect, meaning miss their connection, on an international flight to a specific destination at a specific hub? That little example spans operational data and customer data.
So you know who that guy is?
Or what the most likely profile of that person is, certainly. I mean, we know it right down to the gate level. And then once one reveals that through analytics, then you can go in and fix the problem. So quite a bit, if you were to say, so what's going on at United Airlines these days? What are high priorities? Well, certainly we've touched on digitally advancing the customer experience. Enterprise data analytics, very, very high priority.
The big and big data. Let's switch to your other part-time job. You're the president of MileagePlus, another group inside United Airlines, which could be a fortune company. I don't know what the revenue would be, but a massive separate company. Yeah. A lot, exactly. And so that's true. But in the era of consumers kind of just switching flights for 10, 20 cents, $20, whatever, how are you approaching people, trying to keep them more loyal? And specifically with this audience here, how are you kind of attracting millennials into new loyalty type programs?
I would say a few ways to answer the question. The first is the loyalty program needs to be entirely digitally enabled, or we're going to lose everybody in this room and, fade into irrelevance. And so big priority has been for a couple of years, and is more than ever, move the whole program onto the mobile app. That's sort of fundamental, but is still true. I think beyond that, it's a matter of increasing the value and utility of, but I say the MileagePlus program, including not just United Airlines, but the co-brand credit cards. I mean, we have credit card here in the United States with Chase, obviously. If you walk through here with your eyes open, you see that. But then and also dozen or so other countries around the world. Japan, UK, I think are the next big two after that. But continuing to expand the utility of the program, meaning in terms of how one earns and redeems miles. I'll give you an example. We have an app out there now called MileagePlus X, which enables one to earn miles for purchases at a whole wide range of retailers. And MileagePlus X is really indicative of the direction, in many ways that the program will be headed. So the short answer to your question is expand the utility of the program on both in the vernacular earn and burn sides of it.
And on the earn and burn side, I think it's just you, but maybe other airlines too, are switching to, hey, just don't track my miles. I want to know how much you spend as well. Is that a trend that's going to keep going?
It definitely is, but I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory. What Dean's talking about is the shift of frequent flyer programs, in practical terms, to increasingly being revenue-based. And here's sort of the backstory on that. If you go all the way back to the inception of frequent flyer programs in, as I recall, 1981, it, I'm sure, seemed intuitively logical at the time to have them be based on how far you fly. The unit of mileage earning, well, by definition, the term miles. The unit of value earning was not spend, it was distance. Seemed logical at the time. If you take a trip, you travel some unit of distance, sure, why not? Miles made sense. Fast forward 30 years, and the unintended consequence of that is that the economics and value recognition and value delivered to the customer ends up really upside down, or with some really unintended consequences of having the value earning based on miles, not revenue. And I won't go into the behind the scenes economics of the program, but you end up with some really upside down economics that the individuals in whom we should be investing the most sometimes aren't. And you end up with a rather distorted investment picture. And I can say, as we talked about going to a revenue-based program, having been in every step of the way in that decision process, never along the way was we need to spend less money on this program, the intended aim. It was and is, we need to invest in the right individuals and get the program optimized going forward. And so that's really sort of the backstory. It all goes back to these programs were originally created based on miles, and that created some really unintended outcomes.
So, by the way, if anyone wants to ask a question, you've got to text it in so it gets up on the screen. Let's switch to everybody really wants to hear about. How do we improve the...
We're losing people. I think, switch your back. Go ahead.
How do you improve the in-flight experience? What are you guys doing there? And one of the specific questions is around the in-flight entertainment, too. You guys made a gutsy, bold move years ago, maybe 18 months, I can't remember, to say, listen, we're going to get out of this hardware business of constantly buying new screens and equipment in the planes and go with the BYOD trend, just like in offices now, use your own device in the airplane. Was not a popular decision. Now it's coming back finally to, in a scalable way where people love it. But that's just a piece of the in-flight experience. So maybe touch on that, but
sure,
more importantly, has the industry improved the experience?
Sure. Well, I think what Dean is referring to, we made the decision to go to onboard streaming media through one's own personal device, which we have been referring to date, and I say it that way because we will be announcing a branded name for the service going forward, but as personal device entertainment. And you've probably seen it, I don't know, here, gotten an email about it. I will say, and the decision, really underpinning personal device entertainment was that if you look at people's behavior in every other aspect of their lives, they're demonstrating a propensity and a preference for receiving entertainment content on their own personal devices. So why would that not hold true in flight on airplanes as well? That basically was the underlying logic of the decision, a couple of years ago now, probably 2 years ago now. And so we made the decision going forward that we would not entirely, but largely shift to delivering entertainment on board the aircraft through personal devices. That is what as personal device entertainment. What I will say that we haven't said publicly before, personal device entertainment has been enormously well received by our customers. I'll tell you why we haven't talked about it a lot up until tonight, is because when we introduced Wi-Fi, I'm happy to talk about why we went down the path that we did with Wi-Fi. There were some rough spots introducing Wi-Fi at one point, and it related to technical circumstances that I won't bore you here. Suffice to say, at one point somebody said to me, well, what problems are they having? I said, well, hardware, software, and network. Other than that, got it. And but given the introductory rough spots that we had with Wi-Fi, we said we're going to be sure that personal device entertainment is working impeccably before we really talk about it broadly. That's why if you notice, Flying United, we just sort of rolled it out and didn't call a lot of attention to it. And we'll have personal device entertainment on over 500 mainline, in the airline parlance, mainline aircraft. We got hundreds of aircraft flying today with personal device entertainment on them. It has been extremely well received by our customers, a very popular service for all the reasons that it was intended to. And I think that's indicative of how we see travelers' preferences going forward. People want to get entertainment and information on planes, same way they want to get it every other part of their life, and that's on their personal device.
Let's switch to the innovation part of your job. You recently partnered with Kellogg Graduate School on a program where the students came in and built a new innovation pipeline for you, new concepts and stuff. McDonald's did it about a year ago, and they're actually implementing some of the things that we came up with. Are you guys going to be implementing anything we did for you?
I expect we may very well.
I have to warn you, some of the students are in the crowd here.
I was going to say, I was talking with one of the students, standing right there actually, beforehand. No, it's interesting. The students from Kellogg came up with some extremely not only relevant, but potentially high business value ideas for us. And I'm sure you've all been in those situations. And one can say polite things like, well, that's an interesting idea, we might do that. But in this case, I found myself saying, we would actually really do that. And so I expect that we will. I mean, it's been really worthwhile.
Yeah, it was only a month or so ago. Let's switch. You and I just went on a tour of 1871 and Matter, our newest incubator in Chicago. Really cool place. Everybody should go check out. And we looked at a couple companies over there. Obviously, Rocket Miles left there, but Jay's here tonight and just sold to Priceline a little early. But what do you think of these new business models and startups kind of coming into the industry and what it's doing with and without some of the big carriers?
I think that you mentioned Jay Hoffman, and I'll call out Jay. I think Jay Hoffman exemplifies 1871, innovation, all good things in the travel industry, and I have a lot of admiration for what Jay did starting Rocket Miles. And it is like a cliche story that Jay first described Rocket Miles to me sitting in a Starbucks at Lake and LaSalle. Remember that, Jay? And now Rocket Miles has grown up and been sold to Priceline, and Jay's still hanging out with us. So
even after his $20 million check?
Even after his $20 million check.
All right, that's good.
But, yeah. So, no, seriously, I think that for a company like United, it is very, very important to maintain a proactive, engaged outreach to people doing very innovative things in the digital world, as evidenced by evenings like getting together like this. Because it is unavoidably true, and I know there's a lot of big companies represented here, it is quite possible, if one lets it happen, it is quite possible to become insular in a world of legacy systems and not stay in active engagement with the people really doing interesting, innovative, progressive things in the digital world. And so what we do, and that's why getting together tonight's a great example, is to really try to be engaged and be open to opportunities with people like here tonight doing really progressive, innovative things.
And they are. We do this Dancing with Startups program, and you know, the industry's been looking at all different types of ways to, not just at 1871, but around the world, to partner. Let's take one of the ones up on the screen, wearables. What are your thoughts on wearables? I know you guys tested beacons out at LAX a long time ago. You were at the Wearables Summit we had here. It was interesting to see your guys collaborating with other non-competitive Fortune 200 companies while we were hosting the session. But what are your personal thoughts on wearables? How's it going to transform the travel industry?
I've got a lot of enthusiasm for wearables, and yet it remains to be seen what specific devices, uses, applications ultimately over the long haul will be the ones that that prove to have longevity and utility and value. But being a heavy-duty, committed Fitbit aficionado, be a little bit hypocritical not to be open-minded to wearables. We're very engaged with Apple. I think it made it into the Journal or someplace a week or two ago that we do have a working Apple Watch prototype. And so in terms of, I think the question, I saw it up there, and I forget exactly how it was worded, but there was something to the effect of, how do you do? Is the question still up there? Okay. With mobile and wearables changing so fast, how can United stay ahead and not build something that quickly goes out of date? You probably can't do that perfectly. Some things you're going to do and they're not going to work out.
That's one of the issues with
scale. That was
scale.
my reaction when I read the question was, some things you do and they prove not to have longevity, but the alternative is don't be out there and don't be advanced and don't try new things. And so I think that, you know, as we said at the outset, we really are committed to staying at the leading edge, and that means some things will pan out and some things won't.
So a couple questions about, actually my question for you, this is the guy, I mean, I'll be in his office at 6 o'clock at night and he'll be ordering Starbucks. You drink more coffee than anyone I know. So besides caffeine, what is keeping you up at night, the challenges you really face?
I think that, as evidenced by the conversation this evening, as intensely as we are focused on digitally enabling the customer experience, we need to be sure to maintain that leadership position. We enjoy leadership position. We certainly enjoy leadership position with the mobile app. We have very strong growth in our digital channels, and we need to not let that diminish at all. We need to accelerate it, and particularly we need to accelerate the application of analytics and the use of digital channels to enable the customer experience.
So I was going to ask you about your passion, but I think I just heard it. It obviously is what you're focused on. One question, they wanted to know, how was your trip to Taipei? How was the food and the culture? And the
trip to Taipei was quick, left on...
I think you were there for 12 hours, so it probably doesn't count.
Left, got there next day, was in a meeting, had dinner, left, came back, here we are. So that was trip to Taipei. From what I saw, it looked pretty nice place, I don't know.
Favorite city to travel to in the world?
Favorite city to travel to in the world? London.
Fortunately, United goes there. We want to thank you for flying all the way back for this. Really appreciate it. We've got a little something for you before we end the evening.
Is it coffee? Can it hold coffee?
Oh, they just printed this out on the 3D printer, guys. It's a little United Airlines innovation chip.